I was gonna give the ladies a round of applause, but I believe they just walked out the door carrying stuff, so we'll do that. But, okay. We have, Aunt Sarah has agreed to a short question and answer period. There was one in the committee that wanted to ask her some questions sometime about, you know, whatever. And she has agreed to an answer, question and answer for a short period. So if anybody has any questions of Aunt Sarah, we'd like to do that at this time. So if you've got a question you want to ask about anything about family history, why?
I always wondered if we just didn't think you were kind of all in the wilderness, all by yourself. I mean, it's so desolate out there.
I often wondered, it just seems like it's desolate out here. It must have been not very many people way back when, and that you kind of felt like civilization was off someplace else. I mean, really, don't you? You know, but it is, I go out here and there's long, you know, towns are not that big and things like that. Did you ever feel like you were kind of towards the end of the earth or anything?
I was from a big family, and I don't think it bothered us at all. And we always went to church, and we were involved in church and so on too. So I don't think that bothered us at all. And we did have it isn't like nowadays. We didn't have cars to, you know, to get around with people, so that made it interesting.
Bonnie, just have her tell about their neighbors. There was a lot of neighbors around there at that time. They weren't alone.
Yeah, talk about how much you did with your neighbors.
Yeah.
A lot more neighbors.
Yeah, when I was growing up, we always took their mail. We had the mailbox from home, and when we would go to school, then we would get our mail, and we would take the neighbors' mail along too, and then we would bring it to them too, so that made it. So we got to see them every day too. Yeah.
Talk about living up on the hill.
Yeah. Our place was up on a hill, and we could see for miles around. And then I got married. And the place was full of trees. And the screen porch had vines on it, and I couldn't see out of the kitchen window at all. And that bothered me.
Anybody else have any questions?
This goes to on Sarah's memory. I was told, and it's in the nice sheet that Harriet wrote up, that Ritska and Trinci, their house burned in the Netherlands. Their house burned down, and so they emigrated because they couldn't afford to rebuild. Did you come up with that information? Did you learn that from Grandpa, or can you tell us more about that?
I don't think hearing us at all. They just, Mom must not have mentioned that at all. So,
How old were you when you realized that Grandpa was not a full brother?
yeah. I don't know.
The question was, how old was she when she realized Grandpa was not a full brother?
Well, I don't think I must have been old enough to realize that that happened.
You really didn't know when you were a kid, did you?
No, I don't. No, it was this Victorian.
I remember when my family found out, and I think that's when my parents found out. I was already married.
Speak to the mic, sorry. Speak to the mic. so you remember. This is Joyce.
I remember getting a call from my dad when I was married and had 3 children already in Orange City, and he said, "We would like to come this weekend. We have something we'd like to tell you or talk about." And I was concerned because I thought one of them was ill or something. And then he told me the story, about Grandpa. And he had not known before. He was, until a week or so before, he did not know it. And the way I understood, he found out from Uncle Will. And Grandpa, do you understand that? Grandpa told him, Uncle Will, and gave him the responsibility to tell the rest of the family.
Didn't know that story. Did you know that story?
But, I would say that was in the early 70s. And I don't know if it's all correct, but that says I
I can talk loud, Harlan. Mom found out about that when Grandpa was just days before Grandpa died. I remember it distinctly. I was at home and Mom came home, could not believe what she had heard, but did say that some of the other siblings knew it. But it was in 1961. Just before Grandpa died, my mom learned it.
Did everyone hear that?
May I add that when we found out, Harold said, "That explains Harriet."
That explains this area.
There's more to the story. Dad, who grew up very close to Mom, Dad's family did, just, a mile or more, Dad said, "Oh, we all knew that. We life, you know, in his situation, but Mom did not, but Dad, oh, definitely, the Dyksters, and he said it's a talk to everybody, the Sturks that lived right south, the places off the map, right down the hill from Aunt Elva's farm to Wayne. Oh, yeah, everybody, they knew it when folks came from Holland, that
They knew that he was a Yochi.
yeah, yeah.
Joe. Anyway, what I had said, that when we found out, Harold said, looking at our sister Harriet, that explains Harriet.
I think that was payback for a comment Harriet made last night.
I don't want to repeat too much of that. I'm going to tell the same story in a little different way. My dad came to me a little bit distraught. This was just before Grandpa died. And Grandpa had the boys or the children all in and told them that he was not the son of Ritzka, that he was the illegitimate son of Trinci, and that he was Jewish. That bothered my dad a little bit. But I was happy to tell him that I had recently taken Psychology 101 and 102, and they had studied about IQ tests. And they were talking about the difficulty of making IQ tests really represent intelligence. And they said that one of the problems was that Jewish people scored 25% higher.
Well, I can be honest and tell you that my parents never informed me. And
I found out at a family reunion.
and yeah, we found out a family reunion one time, so we,
And so did we.
and so did you,
We were
Lois?
never told.
No, so,
And Irene said she was told on the cemetery once when, Irene was told on the cemetery once when she was with
my
her.
sister Mary
Yeah.
said that Irene was told on the cemetery
She was
by,
with mom and
I
dad.
was, I don't remember that.
Irene doesn't remember that.
We were so shocked, I can still remember, we were in Corsica Park.
So, can I get my sisters up here and we'll have a little family discussion about
I think people knew it a long time ago, but we, the family, didn't know it at all. That's the way I feel. I had a cousin. He didn't even call Grandpa. That was our Jake. Old Jake.
They never called him Uncle Jake, it was Old Jake. So it was more derogatory, it wasn't, very respectful, because they knew that he was a half-brother, but Mom didn't. And that all fit together afterwards. And also, you talked about the hayland in Mud Lake was divided up between all the other brothers, and Grandpa didn't get a piece of that. And they didn't realize at the time why he didn't get part of it, but then later on, he was kind of relieved that he didn't, because there was always so much fighting about the lines and that piece that was split up, so.
I have a simpler question. What day was laundry day at your house with all those children? What day was laundry day at your house with all those children?
And bread making.
And bread making.
That was a wash.
Every, once a week, I think. But not that often.
How about bread? How often did Grandma bake bread?
Twice a week. And she made 32 loaves.
Twice a week, that's 64.
It wasn't individual bread pans, but they had a pan about this long and 4 loaves in each pan. And 2 pans could fit in the oven of the cook stove. And she had to bake 2 pans with 1 batch of bread. Two ovens full. Yeah.
Was it a gas oven?
And then she had to do that twice a week.
So what kind of oven, was it a gas oven?
No. Cook stove.
For the younger generation, that mean you had to know just how much wood, would you use wood for fuel? Or what did you have for fuel? Cobs and whatever. You had to get it down so you had just the right temperature to get it to bake right. And they didn't.
And the summertime, it was so terrible to bake 2 ovens twice a week in the cook stove. And I kept
Is there anybody that has a name, middle name, or name Jacob?
Yes.
Okay.
Our youngest grandson is Jacob,
Okay.
and Peter Jacob is our son.
Well, when Dwayne was born, Dwayne Jr. said, "We're not going to have another Jacob," he said.
Harold's middle name is Jacob.
Well, I always liked Dwayne, and he said, "Well, we'll name him Dwayne J. That's closer, but if we're not going to have another Jacob." Jr. did say that.
Any other questions?
Well, I have a grandson, Jacob, and his mother is here.
Great. You know, when she was telling about the neighbors, you know, knew all this and everything, the thought that came to my mind, I wonder if we were living in today's society and all the social media, if we would have known before that. I bet it would spread a little faster, wouldn't it?
We had some kids that are asking, and Aunt Sarah can explain. Some of the kids I know are kind of wondering, Grandpa was born out of wedlock. Can you tell the story behind that?
He lived with his grandparents while they were in the Netherlands. But then, when they decided to move to America, his dad, or his stepdad, didn't want to take him along. And, but I think his mother finally did. She wanted to take him along. And I guess he finally gave in that we could go. So,
I think she said, if Jacob stays here, I stay here.
Yeah.
She wasn't leaving him behind.
yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Did everybody hear that? What Dwayne said? No, when they were, maybe you know, I think what the kids were maybe asking about was Grandpa's real father. How that came to be, right? Yeah.
In this genealogy business, you can either go descendants or ancestors, and you can do both. I have focused on descendants, but there's work to be done on ancestors. Jacob's father was Louis Peters Bakker, B-A-K-K-E-R. I may have it mixed up. It may have been Peter Louis Bakker, because there were two males in the family, 24 years apart or something like that. And it may have been that the father took the blame for the 20-year-old's indiscretions or something like that. I have a copy of the Bakker genealogy in that book up there. You're welcome to look at it. It's my intention, someday when I feel quite lucid, to get that all keyed in. And it's quite confusing because you will notice in many of those genealogies from the 1800s in the Netherlands, the names came like that all the time. Peter Louis would have been Louis' son, named Peter. And it's like the Scandinavian where they called someone Ericsson. This would have been Peter Louis' son. And then the next generation would be Louis Peter's son. And the next generation would be Peter Louis' son. So you can see that the keyboard work is difficult. Further, there are that genealogy is copied in the book up there. You're welcome. I'll help you find it if you want. The book is kind of big. Anyway, there's a very small print one, which seems to be a corrected copy. The earlier one of the Bakker genealogy is in nice big print, and it's a little bit easier to read. But it seems that they made some corrections in the later one, so you can see that's all part of my struggle. But I do plan to key in that whole Bacher genealogy, to take the discussion a step further. I believe that Grandpa Jacob claimed to be descended from Gelderland, which is a province of the Republic of the Netherlands. All of this genealogy and so much of the record comes from Friesland. But yet, I know that Grandpa would say from time to time, well, but they're Fries. And he had a little bit of disdain for the Fries. But yet, everything in the genealogy points to Friesland. And yet the Wolbrink name is not a typical Fries name. A Fries name would be Dijkema, with the M-A on the end of it is a typical Fries name. So there are some puzzles there. Perhaps Ritska perhaps Trinci was sent there to be a domestic in this household of the Bachers, who were obviously a little more well off. Perhaps Ritska went to Friesland to get work. So I don't know how that connection goes with Gelderland. I went to the gemeentehuis in Gelderland and found that it had been closed. The gemeentehuis is the courthouse. And they had closed the courthouse in Gelderland and combined it with the adjoining county. Well, by that time it was too late in the day and I never got any further with that. So it's kind of an interesting puzzle, and I'd be happy to talk more about it.
Thank you, David, for all the work you've done on the genealogy.
Harlan, I just have one minute if I'm done, and I can tell David this is
Talking about Gelderland or Friesland, I lived in France for a year, and Dad and Mom came over, and Martha too. And we did a little tour, and we ended up in Amsterdam to visit the stops, because one of the uncles was still alive. Well, when we arrived in the Netherlands and Dad started speaking Dutch, of course the Dutch people were so happy to hear somebody speaking Dutch, and they said, oh, you're obviously from the Gelderland, because all of the provinces had a distinct dialect. And they didn't say Friesland, they said the Gelderland. But Grandma Brouwer weren't the Brouwers from the Gelderland, because when you think about who the child learns more of the language from, particularly back then, Grandpa would have picked the Dutch up more from Grandma. I mean, Gideon would have picked the language up more from Grandma, and if she was speaking more with, although Grandma was born here in the United States, but her parents wouldn't have been. But anyway, that was just a little, it was interesting to me that they picked up immediately on Dad's Dutch accent as being Gelderland.
I think you were all responding to when you wondered when you're trying to figure out when your parents found out about Grandpa's legacy. I think Dad learned about it earlier than what the rest of them did. He had referred to that me later on. He spent a lot of time with Grandpa, obviously, and went on a lot of rides and such. And he said that he knew it before everybody else did. But I also remember them talking about it when I was a kid, like with Aunt Nellie and Uncle John and so, and they often referred to that they thought they could be grateful that they didn't have Wolbrink blood running through their veins. Because not all the Wolbrinks that we know were as prominent as what his dad was.
Who else remembers comments like that? I do.
I'm just going to go back to David's
story about the barn burning down. My dad told me the same story, that in the Netherlands, you were in a certain class. Either two, you had people working for you, or you worked for people. And there was no chance to move from one class to the other. In the Netherlands their barn was connected to their house. And they had a fire and basically lost everything. And so that's what prompted them to move to America, because there was no chance of them staying in the class that they were in. He would have to go get a job, and their family would have been destined to stay in the lower class. So that's what prompted them to come to America. And about the part, Dad told me the same thing about Grandpa, that our great-grandpa wanted to leave Jacob behind. He said, we're going to go, but he has to stay. And Grandma finally said, if Jacob stays, I stay. And so then he agreed to let him come along. That was a story that I had been told.
I feel guilty monopolizing this, so if you're tired of these stories, please give me a big round of applause and I'll be quiet. Immigration in those days was an incredible thing. We took a trip to Ireland recently and we looked at one of the immigrant ships, and the way they packed them in there, not only how packed they were, but the way they packed them in there is unbelievable. The ceilings in those immigrant boats were like this. And they had boards along the side that were assigned to families. And you put the whole family in this little narrow bunk space. Grandpa Jacob emigrated at 8 years old in 1883, arrived in 1883. If you go to Washington, D.C., in the Department of the Census, or the Department of the Archives, you can look up census. I looked at the census of 1890, and the Wolbrink family was there with their children. But Jacob did not show up. If you look in the surrounding neighborhood, you finally found Jacob listed as a house builder. So he was staying with this family during the census as a house builder in 1890. He was born in 1875. I think there are those here that can figure out how young he was when he was hired out as a house builder. Ritzka and his family emigrated with an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-month-old. Yanachi, the baby, died at sea, and obviously was buried at sea. But the ship's master did not note that on the manifest, as he was supposed to do by law. My guess is that they were very concerned about communicable diseases on the ships in those days, and anytime there'd be very many deaths, there'd be a great investigation that would slow down his trip. I was always of the impression that it was a sailing ship. It was, but it also had a steam engine, a single screw compound steam engine. The SS Zondam. Now, if you take a trip, a cruise, you want to go up the Alaska coast on the Holland American Line, you can today take a nice ride on the the SS Zondam. It's the third one. That company was not named the same then, but it is the outgrowth. It is the outgrowth that is the Holland America Line. That was an amazing thing. They had the ship was just a little over 300 feet long. They had 800 passengers on that ship. And if you take the average beam and the average length of the hold, it calculates to about 8 square feet per passenger. quite tight.
Keep talking.
Grandpa was a builder, and I guess most everyone knows, but maybe the younger kids don't know, that the house, the barn, and every building on that farm were his construction, besides other buildings that he built for people, for other people. The power plant, there was no electricity on poles there, but they had electricity. He dug 6 feet deep at least, a little more, built a concrete basement out in the yard alongside the kitchen, put in a light plant. He may have had some of his oldest son's help, because his oldest son went to Coyne and was manager of the Murdo Power Station, which was one of Edison's first stations. Maybe Jim was born there. No? Alan was. Okay. And that power plant was there for years and years and years. It had a single pipe coming out of the ground. Many of you may remember that when the power plant ran, that pipe was the exhaust that came out of the ground. It really quieted it down in the earth. It was quite an installation.
I think following on David's story of the power plant in White River, that we had traveled out here 40 years ago with Mom and Dad one time. We were living in Connecticut. And we stopped in Murdo, and he found that power plant. And it was not in operation, but he opened the door and looked in and said, I installed that panel, that electrical panel. It had been added on to. John and I have tried to find it, but can't. But I think he did help Grandpa build this power plant. And I have a question for Aunt Sarah of at what point did you start speaking English at home rather than Dutch? Because Dad did not know English when he started school.
As long as I remember, he could speak English, so.
He was the oldest in the family.
Yeah.
Much older was Uncle Rich.
Well, I don't.
He was born in '04.
Oh, and I was born in 1922, so that, yeah. I have an interesting story to tell you. Pa Doris one time, he was upstairs in our own house, and then he heard his stepdad say, I moved the light. And that, that in Dutch was, he had to get out. And he felt bad about that. Yeah, he was working, and his mother always kept the light on till he came home, he said.
So how old is he when he started?
Well, I suppose when he was in his 20s, and maybe even before that. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Aunt Sarah, for providing that information. And for the rest of you too, it's real interesting to hear about some of the stories, and Merlin's getting a recording of it. Then we'll be able to go back and we can remember some of these things if they don't get recorded, like
Going back to Grandpa and him starting out at a young age, I think you said 15. Aunt Katie told me at one of the reunions in the past, we toured the home place and the homestead, and we were standing outside the homestead, and we were just looking at this building, and it's just a small, it's right by you there, there was just like a story and a half. There was a little window up there. And Aunt Katie said, that's where it all happened. And I said, well, what's that? And she said, Dad was up there when he was a young boy, and he overheard his mom and dad arguing right here in the front yard. And they were arguing about him. And his dad said, he has to go. He has to go. We can't afford to have him around anymore. And his mom said, no, where will he go? What will he do? He says, I don't know, but he has to go because we can't afford him. And that was when Grandpa was sent away. He was like, I think 14, she thought. So, yeah, I just thought that tough deal.
Yeah, you're referring to that little house in what we call Gerald's Place?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to report that that house is not standing anymore. It caved in or whatever happened, I don't know, but it's not standing. All right, we have, Fran has agreed to lead us in some songs. Are you ready, Fran?
Sure.
And do you have the song sheets?
Gotta have a song sheet.
Does everybody have a song sheet?
Oh, they're in the podium. Kelly and Abby will help you.
Oh, okay.
They'll pass them out.
We're gonna wait about 5 minutes. I had a couple comments say they need a little bathroom break. So if we'll take a few minutes for a little bathroom break, and we'll be right back with Fran Mason and singing.